Hi friends, welcome back to Building in a Small Town. My guests today are Brenda and Neal Schwager of Knacker / Gin and Tarnish on Main Street in Jewell. Though they may not necessarily say they're based in Jewell, we get into it, you'll see. Brenda is an OG, original in the junkin and repurposing industry. She's been in it for many years, and you'll hear all about how the business was born out of necessity and has morphed to fit their lives over the years. She is full of knowledge and experience, and I really enjoyed this episode, and I know you will too. Just a quick note to say that the audio quality of this episode really isn't up to my usual standard. Needless to say, the long break that I took from recording has left me rusty, and I'm not sure what happened, but the mic track for Brenda's mic was silent when I went to edit the episode. Thankfully, the other mics were able to pick up what she said, but it might be harder to hear than normal, and I am truly sorry for that. I will be troubleshooting before the next episode is recorded. Please don't let my screw up keep you from listening to this episode. It really is full of nuggets. So please listen to it and just curse at me as you get annoyed with the audio quality. I'll fix it, I promise. But before we get into the episode, I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you for listening and ask you to make sure that you're subscribed on whatever your listening platform. I recently heard a wild statistic that over 50% of podcast listeners started listening to a new podcast after being recommended by a friend. On that note, could you share the show with someone that might enjoy it? It's a simple, free way to help support the show. Welcome to Building in a Small Town, where we're talking to entrepreneurs, community leaders, policymakers, and more to find out how they're building things in small towns. I'm your host, Shabby Smith. Hello and welcome back to the Building in a Small Town podcast. After quite a long break, I am back with a bang. I have Brenda and Neal. We're going to say based in both Gilbert and Jewell, sort of, for their businesses, Knacker and Gin and Tarnish. And is there anyone that I don't know about that I didn't just name?
No, we've been Knacker. I will tell you as we get into this what our first name was, and it only lasted for about 10 months because it's embarrassing. But,
I can't wait.
Yeah, but Gin and Tarnish, and that's kind of that's its own thing with my daughter, and I hope someday after mothering little kids that will be. I think she'll come back and be full force Gin and Tarnish. It was just hard for me to get rid of that name because that's what's on the Jewell building, and it's kind of a cool name.
It is, and she's got a brand built around it, and there's no point in throwing all that away, all that work that has been done. So, anyways, let's kind of start at the beginning. Are you originally from Gilbert, you guys, or did you?
I grew up in rural Ames and went to Gilbert. Yeah, graduated from Gilbert and went to Iowa State and met Neal there. But we were just friends, and then went on to Iowa to be a nurse, and got my nursing degree, and found him back in Ames at a bar. Just found him.
As you do.
Well,
and Neal, are you from Ames?
I grew up in Bellevue, Iowa, which is over along the Mississippi. Yep.
Say way out
So,
west,
yep. East.
Yeah.
Yep. South of Dubuque. Yep.
Yeah. That's not the one I was thinking of. I was thinking of east. I was pointing east and saying west.
You were.
Okay, and so then you went to Iowa State.
Came to Iowa State and have been Ames area since. Yep.
Nice.
So we started a family. I started as a nurse. He was at Wells Fargo, and had 3 kids before we knew it, and was just sitting at swimming lessons with my friend Julie, and we were just racking our brains like, what can we do to make money? What can we do? And she was already kind of a stay-at-home mom, but I was working weekend package, and I was over it as a nurse. As the kids got older, it just got harder to do because you wanted to be there at things, and so you just not sleep. I was a night nurse, and Yeah, so we just were racking our brains, and one day I came to the swimming lessons, and I said, it wasn't us learning, I should have though, I'm not very good at swimming, but it was our kids, and I said, I found this article in this magazine, because magazines were big, we're talking.
So I was gonna say, is this early 2000s?
Okay. Yeah, 2001. There was not really social media that we knew of, so I was looking in a Victorian magazine that might be familiar to some people, but magazines, if you were into the decor world, you just would go through your magazines. It was a big deal. Country Home, Country Living.
Which were all based in Des Moines.
Yeah,
which is wild.
Yeah, Grant from
Yes.
Great Home Goods was the art director, or I'm not sure I said that right, for Country Home, but loved all that. And found this article, and it was about these two sisters out of Buffalo, Minnesota. And I'm like, well, that's not too far away. And they were just finding stuff and, repurposing it. And it wasn't like grand antiques or anything like that, because my mom had an antique shop in the 80s and 90s, and I helped her with it, and our house was full of antiques. My folks moved an old house from Ames out to the country, so we'd done all that. I had no interest in it, so it really came to me. I say as a financial need, a want to do something different, and a financial need to make ends meet. But I was also really into those magazines, so obviously I liked things like that. So long story short, we decided we'd go and we'd figure out at their next sale. They were having these monthly sales, they call them, occasional sales in Minnesota. And we drove up there, and we were too shy to ask any questions, but we're looking at all these people just hauling things out of, I think it was called Rustic Rose or something like that in Buffalo, Minnesota. And it was two girls that were probably about 10, 15 years younger than us. And we left there like going, we're kind of quiet as we left, but in my mind, I'm like, we've got to do this like next week. And I think Julie, my good friend, was like, yeah, we got to do this, but let's go to the business class, let's take this, and she was making plans and so when we finally talked, I'm like, no, I think we need to do it like sooner than later, because somebody's going to do it. And, somebody probably was doing it in Iowa, it just wasn't known to everybody. So that's how it started. 3 weeks later, it really was. It was like the end of August 2001, and we set up on her property south of Gilbert. We called ourselves Shabby Chic, because Shabby Chic was hitting the Midwest at that point, even though it had been around about 10 years with Rachel Ashwell and stuff. And we thought, yeah, Shabby Chic. I don't know if we never wanted a guy to enter our buildings or what, but that was, so we had a little shed in the front and a barn in the back, and we started with, I think each of us put in about $600 in inventory, if that. And we came out and we had made about, like 3,600, 3,800. And you know who my very first customer was Joan from Great Home Goods. And she bought these red leather chairs that we had gotten off the side of the road. And one of them ended up in Country Home Magazine. Which, it all comes full circle. So that was our first sale, and we were so excited. I think the husbands thought we were like, well, what was your comment?
I thought you were stealing money from people.
Yeah, that's not cool. I'm like, oh. So.
Well, and so talking about that very first inventory, you said you got these red leather chairs off the side of the road. Like, where were you? What kind of inventory back in the early 2000s?
Yeah.
Are you grabbing? Like, where are you getting it from? Yeah. You talked about these girls up in Minnesota. They were doing a lot of like repurposed stuff. Were you more like, we'll find things that I think will sell, and let's see what happens?
Julie was a painter. She's very artistic. So she was all in on like painting things was it. In fact, we took this beautiful, probably walnut headboard, and we painted it and sold it.
Hurt a little
bit. A little bit. We sold it on the first sale, and the mom was like, this is going to be great because my daughter's in 4-H and she has to refinish something. And so this will be, and we're like, great. That'll work out well. So
little did she know it had already been refinished.
So yes, I think our go-to back in the day was Cole Auction. I'll give Bob Wilson a shout out because we would just fill a van full for $50. And I think some of the people just thought we were crazy, the things we were buying. Any cute chair, even if it was rickety, outdoor things, garden things. What else do you remember?
Baskets and just benches.
Plates, benches, a lot of outdoor things. So we would set up outside the barn, we would set up inside the barn, and the barn was a working barn. So after our once a month sales, we had to get everything out, put it in the trailer, and the horses and the cows went back in. So it was a lot of work. But I think the most interesting thing to me about when we started was that it was the weekend, our first sale was the weekend before 9/11. And so 9/11 happened, and I happened to be at a consignment store with my 2-year-old and the 2-year-old that I babysat, my nephew, and hearing it on the radio. And first thought was like, everything's gonna change, everything. And looking at these little 2-year-olds, it made me so sad. And then thinking, even if it was a selfish thought, I don't care. It's what came into my mind was, oh, we had started this great business, and that's over. But we found it wasn't. It wasn't. And actually, they really needed us the next month. We had it, and they needed us. People needed something normal, and yeah.
Yeah, I was in 5th grade. I still remember.
You remember?
Remember watching it on the TV while it was happening, and we were all thinking.
I'm old enough to remember like War of the Worlds, not as like a kid listening to the radio and listening to Orson Welles, but my parents talking about it and documentaries on it. And that's what I was hearing on this radio at this consignment shop. I said, is this a play? Are we hearing something?
Yeah.
So anyway, that changed. That was just kind of it's very easy for me to remember when we started.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely have a milestone there
Yeah.
in addition to your own personal milestone. But so at that time, 2001, social media is not a thing.
No.
You guys are just popping this thing up in rural, like between Gilbert and Ames, essentially, in a barn. How are you advertising? Like, how are you getting the word out? Are you buying ad space in Country Home or Country Living, or what are you doing?
We didn't go that far, but we put up a flyer in every Casey's that we came by.
That's a pretty good strategy.
That was really where they had a bulletin board, and that's what the husbands were for. You guys traveled. We had worked in Des Moines. They were putting up flyers in those Casey's. Back in the day, there was a section in the Des Moines Register called The Goods. And it came out Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And that was almost like a magazine to me because I would look, it was a colored section. And you paid, I'm trying to think what it was for those 4 days. It was like $150, maybe a little more than that. For 4 days of advertising, a colored ad, and you came up with your ad.
Dang, that's pretty good.
I know. It seemed expensive back then, but it was worth it. So really our first...
It's like 10% of your budget back then. I mean, it was...
It's tough. But and we didn't advertise in the Ames or the smaller papers. We just went for the Des Moines Register, bigger bang for our buck. So Des Moines people and surrounding areas, they really came to us first off. Ames area, our locals were much, much slower to come to us. And I don't know if that's good or bad, but it just
was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, Shabby Boo Chic.
Yeah.
You kept that name for
about 10 months, I think. Okay. After about 10 months in doing a monthly sale through the winter in Iowa in a working barn, we decided March was the coldest month ever.
Yeah.
Ever. Not for our customers, but for us setting up. And
so it's just that damp cold at that point.
It was just, I remember there was like a Purina dog bag over one of the windows in the barn. And we kept it. We didn't have time to make that look pretty, but
You really lucked out. You never had like a major snowstorm for any of your sales or anything like that. It was every weekend it was cold, but never anything was ever wiped out.
Never an ice storm.
No.
Our customers that came to us from the beginning will remember that they stood in a line back in the yard, because one thing I didn't want it to be like an estate sale where you got numbers, because I hate that. I would have hated this too as a customer though, but we couldn't think of anything better. You stood in a line, there was an alarm clock in the middle between the barn and the line, and when that went off, you could just run into the barn, which was totally safe. And all fire code and stuff like that. It was good.
Fine.
It was good.
Insurance was the least of your worries at that point.
It was, people liked it. I mean, I didn't hear anybody other than me thinking I would have hated that. But at the end of it, we did the barn sales for about 4 years.
Okay.
2001 to 2005. And we knew our time at the barn was limited, that it was just, I think Julie's family, it was just time to leave. So, and in that time they had like torn down the old barn and put up a new shed, which was great, a new barn dominium, but it wasn't what people liked the old barn, I think, quite a bit. So anything else you remember about those old days?
Remember, towards the end, you made it so that any pregnant or women with small children got a head start.
Yeah.
A few years ago, somebody came by and said, "Oh, I was one of those pregnant women. I was so happy."
Yeah, I was Molly.
Oh, was that who it was?
So yeah, and I remember, one thing that I was pregnant in the sale of 2000, it was fall of 2003, and I was expecting on 9/11 our 5th child. And I remember Julie like, "What? This is just going well." She was happy for me, but she's like, "Oh, I don't know how we're going to do this." But ended up having Gretchen on September 13th. And the sale was like 2 weekends later. And it's like one of my proudest moments because I found this great garage sale in Boone that was a 3-story brick building that had been an old Christian men's school, and it was full. And I filled that barn in, 1 weekend. So it can be done with little kids if you want to do it. But I also remember him coming out with baby Gretchen because I loved what I was doing. Julie's barn was about 4 or 5 miles from our home. And it was probably 2 a.m. because we were working late. And he just got out of the car and was holding a screaming baby who would not take a bottle. And I'm like, I'm coming. So those days, there was a real balancing act. But, yeah.
So 10 months in, you change your name. Do you change it to JB Knacker
We
then?
do.
Okay.
And it's funny because later down the road when we were looking for an employee back probably in 2008, we changed our name to JB Knacker, and Julie put the ad in the paper for an employee, and it said something, must be able to lift 20 pounds, blah, blah, blah. We had so many truckers, like, calling us. Or just, it was men that had been in,
maybe not a great fit.
JB Knacker just kind of sounded like a trucking company,
yeah.
too. But we were looking for a name kind of like Eddie Bauer, or something that just might not have been the smartest marketing move because it didn't say what we did.
Mm-hmm.
But if you knew what the words meant, if you knew what Knacker is a buyer of old structures for their parts. There's also a rendering truck rendition of that, or definition.
Which is maybe not what you were going
No,
for.
and then like the European or English is, if you're knackered, you're in a bad way. But,
Yeah.
But
Yes.
it's fit, and I like it, it worked out. J&B, if it's just Julie and Brenda.
Right, that makes so much more sense
Yeah.
now that I know that context.
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys get 4 years into the barn sales.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of time to move on from the barn sales. Are you definitively like, yeah, brick and mortar in town?
We were looking, and Gilbert had no commercial.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was a little Main Street, but there was nothing available. There weren't many buildings. A lot of them burned down many, many, many years ago. And we went into a couple that were for rent, but they weren't in the commercial district. It was right kind of when Gilbert City Council was kind of saying, no, you can't do this. It's got to be, it's got to be in the commercial area. So we heard a rumor that somebody was wanted off of Main Street. They were a young family, and he had bought the home from his father, and his wife was probably wanting off Main Street. And so we did. We just knocked on their door and asked if they were willing to sell, and they were, and they had the upper hand, obviously. So, well, what would you sell for? And so we probably spent the most money on a building on Main Street, Gilbert. It wasn't outrageous, but we did it because we had looked in Ames at renting. We had looked, and it just seemed not right, not big enough, not enough parking, too much. I don't even know what you call it. Having businesses in a small town, when you have to pay for the fees for
Snow
shoveling,
removal.
Snow removal, there's a
Just
certain fee. And we're
all
like,
the
"Oh,
overhead, yeah.
Yeah, I'm like, what? We could do that without paying for it, So, it's good to be cheap in your mind. And so finally they sold the house to us, and we had promised that we would be open at our last sale in October. We promised our next sale would be in November at a brick and mortar. So we closed on like Halloween, and also a big event that happened just a few days before our opening was that tornado that went through. Was it Woodward? No, am I going to get these?
Something with an S. Was it
Stratford
or Stewart?
Stratford, Gilbert.
And then was that Bradgate? I'm
not sure. It feels like it was something south of us. That it was a big, and it was like a Saturday, the day of a football game. It was a very, so, again, Julie and I sat in that basement looking out the window, watching the fire trucks go by and thinking, again, is this the end of, we didn't get hit. Gilbert didn't take a direct hit, but it did go right over the Twin Towers, we called them, the co-op in Gilbert, and so there was a lot of cleanup, but we opened that next Tuesday, so we were Tuesday, Saturday, and we had really weird hours because they were our mom hours. They were like 1 to 6, Tuesday through Saturday, just weird. But they worked. We had a great first year. It's just, we were pumped. We were good.
And so you were open, was that 4 days a week, 5 days a week?
5 days a week, yeah.
Okay, and then were you still at that point, because we're mid-2010s,
2005.
what do you call it?
2005. We're going slow here, sorry.
Yeah,
guys.
no, you're fine. No, you're fine. So your 2005, social media is still not a thing. It's starting to become a glimmer in some people's eyes, but it's not a thing yet.
Mhm.
So are you still relying on...
Yeah, the good section was it was the big thing, and word of mouth.
Mm-hmm.
By that time because we were kind of a new thing. There were others that were doing it and should have gotten more recognition for what they did, but we were kind of new then, and people were starting to kind of do what we did, and that was great. We were starting to notice that we could get more people to come to our business if there were more things to do, so we wanted that competition, and that was kind of a new idea, that competition is good, that nobody in vintage is going to be selling exactly the same thing, which is the really neat part about it. So
yeah, nobody's style is the same.
No,
at all.
So I kind of jumped a few. We had a great first year. We were looking at like, this is a nice part-time income that we can split that for each of us, and then we kind of hit the recession, which we didn't know was a recession for a little while. And we're like, why is it so? It didn't get bad for us, but it got flat.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it didn't get bad for us because we just didn't grow, and we were just so surprised by that. Things were just stagnant for couple years at least.
And this would have been probably like 08 through 2011, I would say. Maybe
Kind of in
2012
that-
things started picking up.
Yeah, and so we for sure decided to reach out to some of the pop-up barn sales that were happening around our area. And I can think of Dory from Jumper Funkery had, I hope I'm going to miss somebody, but Carla from Red Barn Rustics in the area. And we just said, let's do a thing together on the same weekend and call it, I think we called it the Breakfast Club back, the first one, because they'd come and have breakfast on us. That didn't last long because people went through those muffins like nothing. They're like done feeding you.
Yes. Sorry, bring your own food next time.
And so that started in 2009, and then we started doing it twice a year and called it the Central Iowa Junk Job. So that was kind of the start of that, and that helped us through that kind of miserably flat time when it shouldn't have been. We should have been just doing great, but we stayed in Gilbert from 2005 to 2021, so 16 years we were there, and almost 16, a little shy of it.
In the same building?
In the same crooked 2-story building that we're very happy to get. And yeah.
I wasn't so happy when I was digging those bushes out of the side yard, but
I had a little odd job. You know how that goes. Jobs.
Yes, I do. There's a man upstairs who can tell you all about all of mine. Mine tend to be a little larger than digging out the side bushes, but it's fine.
Ideas, we got
Yes.
ideas. So yeah, that was a good run. And I lost my business partner, Julie. She didn't die or anything, but she moved to Colorado, which was always the plan for her. So
And is she still in the business, or
she's
has
not, but she lives in
Okay.
this very artsy, cute little town, Berthoud, Colorado, and she just started her studio in her backyard. She's retired, and her kids are out there. She's kind of living her life. So yeah, Julie Adams she was a great partner to have, but I also enjoyed being solo. And of course Neal was there to bounce things off of, was the kind of the silent partner, but it's great to have a partner. You don't feel alone when you have to make big decisions, but yeah, with a partner you have to split everything too. So
Yeah.
so we really felt like, I think you hit it on the head. 2011, we felt like things were starting to take off. We did a rebrand with Haley Eason out of Ankeny, who's just she's great graphic designer. In like 2015, did it right around the Summer Central Iowa Junk John, and things just exploded. It was just great.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of hard work. And by that time we had 6 kids, so and a lot of them grew up working at the shop. They all, I just noticed this Christmas, I can't thrift great things for them anymore because they're better at it than me, and I wish I hadn't given that power, but they have it now and I can't go back. So when we decided to sell the shop in 21, it was a quick decision. It was a quick, but it wasn't. We sold the building is what we did. We didn't sell the business. I just knew we were going to be going into some harder times again.
Yeah.
And at that point, we had bought a building in Jewell as well. And our daughter rented it from us and ran Gin and Tarnish. And she started that in 2017. Just had a great time. It was just having a lot of fun. And still having fun, but decided 16 years in Gilbert was good. And knew we were going to probably, I just felt like another recession was coming. It would take a little bit, but we needed to probably downsize a little bit. So that's when we sold the building in Gilbert and had no idea it would sell in a day in January. And but didn't really think about, the commercial is starting to grow a little bit in Gilbert, but in the winter of 21, you had to buy some land and build a building to have commercial.
Right.
And so we had this 2-story crooked building with an extra lot on Main Street, and so it was
Valuable.
Yeah.
More valuable than you maybe realized
Yeah,
at the
but
time.
we were happy with the sale, and it went well, and the house is going to have another 50, 75, 100 years of life because the people that bought it really invested in it.
Yeah.
So
And are they running a business out of it now?
they
or-
are retail.
Okay.
I'm sorry, not retail.
Real estate.
Real estate.
Got it.
Or I was going to say Remax Retail Real Estate. So it's a women-owned real estate company.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
They needed it as their home base
Yeah.
kind of a thing.
yeah, so that worked.
Good. Okay, so you mentioned when you first started out, you guys are doing these barn sales. A lot of the things you were selling were like outdoor things.
Yes.
Talk to me a little bit about how that kind of evolved as you went, because you don't, imagine you do a little bit of outdoorsy stuff now, but probably not a lot.
Not a lot, because it's just changed, and you have to, even in selling antiques and vintage, and sometimes antiques was kind of don't say that word, it's so stuffy, but it's coming back. Antiques are not stuffy anymore.
Well, you had a rule at the beginning. You weren't going to sell any dishes.
Oh yeah, no linens and no dishes. And that's kind of probably 2 of my favorite things. Because that's what you find, and what you can, those smalls, where your bread and butter. Mm-hmm. But we had that lawn. At the barn, we had expansive room outside. So, and yes, everybody was decorating outdoors. The more, the merrier. And that has changed. Mm-hmm. The people that are main customers don't want an overextended yard. They want simple. They want it clean and neat. And those that would buy that from us are getting rid of that stuff. They want, they're downsizing. So you just had to go with that that theory. And, you know, we'd be sad when one thing we'd finally say, oh, that's not selling anymore because that was such a great seller. But then there would be something else. And you'd be like, this is great that this chippy stuff, I don't have to do anything to it, and it sells. You know, and then you'd be in the age of having to sand everything and bring it down to raw wood. And you're like, well, I like the look. It's a lot of work, but, and I'm just thinking we just went through a lot of different eras of what was popular and what would, I might get the year, like 5 years ago, buffets were just, find a buffet, you sell the buffet. You,
Or it was metal things.
oh yeah,
Was,
industrial.
went from
They were
wood
heavy.
to metal, or, you know, metal locker baskets, or,
It was a couple of years ago, our third child said to us, Mom, Dad, because we were asking her and her husband to help us carry things, you can only buy things that you guys can lift.
If you can't lift it, you can't buy
You
it.
can't buy it. And I'm like, oh, Lord, I'm glad industrial is out. And, you know, but now, as you know, what do you see in furniture as being the big thing?
I would say the last couple years have been the really, like you said, the bleached, the raw, the really light colored. And while I think that the raw wood will stay, like I don't think that ever goes. I think that's a classic look. I think like warmer browns are gonna be, I know everybody this year is like brown. I'm like,
Yes.
yeah, that's fine. Maybe don't go overboard. I think incorporate some brown into things. I think definitely the like very millennial gray and white is on its way out. I think for me, and very often my husband and I don't agree on what
weird.
goes well. I know. And when he just will make fun of me and be like, I just have an eye for it. I'm like, okay.
We don't like to hear that.
Yeah. Well, I do
We
think
do, actually.
I do think that he's right in that the combination of wood grain and paint also I think is classic and will always stay.
I've seen some of your pieces that are a lot like that, very nice pieces.
And
yeah.
so and for me, like my style is definitely not the same. I tend to not do things. You're sitting in an area where I did this, and this is not what everybody would do. And some people are going to love some of the things. Some people are going to hate some of the things. I don't care. I like it. And so a lot of my stuff goes that way. So I tend to not go the super trendy stuff. But I think some color, for sure, color and wood combination. A little less of the bleach stuff, which, like I said, I like that. It's a lot of freaking work.
It is.
Some is less work than others. But I'm hopeful that the other thing that's been really interesting for me on the furniture side of things, an all wood piece takes much longer to sell, generally speaking, even if I like it more. So even if I don't want to put paint on it, because I'm like, this is solid wood, it's beautiful, like it'll sit much longer, but it'll eventually sell. But it sits for much longer. So people, although they shy away from paint or yell at you on the internet for painting wood, it's what sells, and I'm in the business of selling things. So that's where I think trend-wise, like I said, I'm a millennial, so I don't do the whole Gen Z, like, scalloped trim thing. Like, that's becoming a big thing. There's a lot of things where I can see 1950s, 1960s scalloped. You know, you have the 70s, mid-century modern. But, so I kind of messed with all of it. And honestly, like the hand-painted table that I did with checkers on it, which I'm doing a coffee table now, too, to match it. Because it's old Tell City furniture that I thought Tell City was all wood. Tell City is not all wood. It's laminate top, which is...
Is it 80s?
No, I think it's 70s.
70s?
Yeah,
Okay.
70s is where laminate got really hot.
Okay.
Because we like the look of wood, but we just want to put a picture of wood.
Yeah.
So that you can't do anything with it other than paint it one day. So I'm doing so like that one. I don't think that that's trending or in style or anything that way. That was just an idea that was in my head that needed to come out.
I like that.
So, and that's
We were
good.
kind of reading, I was reading to him. Should we say the word together? I think we should.
color drenching.
Yes.
I've always wanted to do that.
So funny story on this one. So upstairs, so I did the gray that's in here, it's like a light gray. It's not white. I don't like white walls. I don't like white furniture. Yes, it's a light gray that doesn't scream gray, but also doesn't scream white. So I did my upstairs in that color with a blue accent wall in our bedroom, and then my bathroom's black, which I got so much stick about when I was painting it black, but then everybody's like, oh, I actually really want a black bathroom.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
weird. So that gray, when I was deciding on the trim, I said, I'm just going to paint the trim the same color, and I let somebody talk me out of it.
You would have been so ahead of your time.
I know, and that's all I'm thinking, because I see the color drenching stuff this year, and I'm like, that was what I wanted to do, and everybody was like, don't do that, that'll look so bad, and I didn't. But that being said, we have so Minwax's Honey is the stain color that I used on all of our woodwork, and I love it, and it pairs very, very well with that gray, and I actually think longevity-wise it's going to be a much more classic look, so I'm totally fine with it, but I do want to point out that I was correct.
You were correct, and that is Claire and I, Claire who started Gin and Tarnish, our oldest daughter. We were talking, just like you said yesterday, and we were kind of laughing about color drenching. We just like to say the word. And she said, I really like that look, but I feel like it's a little more classic, because we were looking around my house. I'm like, well, I sure don't have color drenching. But she said, but I think you can stick with what you have longer.
Yes.
And that's important too.
Well, and that, and my parents built a house in 2002, and they have some pretty out there stuff too. So like, if you ever go in there, like, it makes sense as to where I get my thing from. That being said, our tastes are very different. But they always said, building that house, and as we were doing this building, they said, we wanted to build something that other people you haven't seen. You don't see it somewhere else. But also you walk into their house built in the early 2000s, and outside of like some sponge painting, that was maybe, not a good choice. Although it's coming back, apparently.
More hotter, yeah.
Yeah. So, other than that, like, you walk into their house, you wouldn't know it was built in 2002, whereas
That's what you want.
yes. And so that's always, when I think about stuff, when I think about pieces that I'm refinishing, like, I don't want you to think 2024, 2025. Like, I want you to think, that's really cool.
I think one of the thing that makes me feel good, we'll have a customer that's been a long time customer come in, and she'll say, oh, my dining room table is from you. I'm like, you still have it from 2002? You still have that dining room table? And she'll be, yeah. So it feels like there's longevity. I will say you do I'm very impressed with how you do furniture. You're
thank you.
Meticulous.
Yes.
And
Possibly to a fault.
Well, I think our first sale at the barn, we were working till 3 a.m, and I just remember somebody coming in and just touching a table and like looking at her fingers like it was still a little wet. So I'm meticulous, but we made a real point in the beginning that we would go with the colors, because painting was big back then.
Yeah.
We went with the color scheme, and that was the fun we had at the beginning, dreaming up what the color scheme and the theme of what that was going to be, and
Which I've found personally, and I think you would probably agree, for me, like, that's one of the more important things is presenting things in a cohesive way. So whether it's color scheme, whether it's like, I kind of have that sectioned off in my shop so that when people walk in, they can kind of envision it in their space.
Neil and I were talking about that on the way down, because even in this, what we're doing now and what we're looking to the future is going to evolve. And I'm like, how did we start doing shows? And I think it was that dang Country Home magazine. Thanks, Grant. We looked in there, and I'm like, look at these two, again from Minnesota, Long Lake, Minnesota. It was, Kai and Sue, and they were having an event 3 hours from us, and Julie was like, I don't know, Brenda, I don't know. And I said, no, let's do it. Well, let's do it. So we did. We packed up that horse trailer, hooked it up to a truck, showed up 3 hours before the show was to start. And people are like, what are you doing? Man, we hustled. We didn't know what we were doing. But that is where I think the Junk Bonanza, which is still going strong, isn't owned by Kai and Sue anymore, but owned by John. He's doing a great job. But it made us do over-the-top display. Like, if you went to the Junk Bonanza, you had to do over-the-top display. which I said to Neal was a good and a bad thing, because it was good. It showed us how to, you know, wow the customers. And I'm very competitive, and so like I wanted to be the wow, you know, but you couldn't be the biggest wow at the Junk Bonanza. There was just so many great ones. And so, and the bad thing, because sometimes now when we do shows, I can't get the display out of my mind. Like, that worries me more than the thinking about it and how it's going to go. And sometimes just, if you got good stuff, you got good stuff, you know.
Right.
But we started setting up at the Elkhorn Flea Market in Elkhorn, Wisconsin, and it's a flea market, so people want to go and they want to dig. Absolutely, I get that. But now I don't know any other way to set up, and so I set up this, you know, not completely elaborate because you're outside, but kind of elaborate. And Joe and Sandy from, if you guys all remember Broad Street Market, loved it in Story City, they got us going there, and we love that show. It's great promoters, great show. But I think people were surprised when they saw our setup, you know. And there's a few, the gals across from us from Green Bay, they do a great setup too. So it's fun to be kind of at the opening of that flea market, and they see the setup, and you can shop people that are setting up, and some people really appreciate that too. I think most people do. I think they think you're going to have higher prices, and that's not necessarily so.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Junk Bonanza ruined it for the rest.
Well, and so when did you start doing those like shows? Because those were not necessarily a thing, I would say, until a certain year.
Junk Bonanza we did early on in 2007.
Okay.
And it was really
that one's really early.
That's
then.
really early. That was really their second. Like, Minnesota was on this as far as like occasional sales and the shows. And then I had a baby in 2008, so we didn't do it during that weekend of it. I'm like, if it would just been the weekend before, the weekend after. That's where I had a lot of energy back then. But and then we just started. What else?
Junk stock was.
Junk stock.
I don't know when that started.
On junk stock.
That started in
maybe 13.
Yeah, 11? I was gonna say. It seems like 22 was the 10-year anniversary, so I'd say it would be 12, 11 or 12.
So yeah,
and that one started in a pasture first, and then
the old farm. And I think the one day somebody was like, "What are those noises?" They were like butchering some animal in the farm because they rented that farm, and we're like, "What noises?" So yeah, it's
the ambiance.
And that one showed us, the ambiance. That one showed us you needed to do a really good display too. I feel like I'm just dropping names, but Sarah Alexander and her family is one of the hardest working groups of people, and they deserve all the accolades as to where junk stock is now, because they were emptying garbage cans, they were setting up this. It was a little more rustic back then, but it was they'd get 25,000 people in that show that weekend, and that's pretty good.
Yeah.
So,
they were able to turn around after a tornado a week before, this spring. So,
yeah, that tells you how, and forward thinking and marketing. Because I think Neal was shocked. We brought some things down to junk stock before the. I'm trying to think. No, you saw junk stock when we were setting up. We set up at the one after the tornado, and you were like, "Oh my gosh, this is like over the top." And I said, that is their marketing. So people take these pictures, and it's all over social media, and
Yes, they do. She does an excellent job of making it Instagrammable.
But even just, they had swarms of people hauling dirt and rock, and because it had been flooded a little bit, and so it was a
city till the night before it opened, and they are also the largest food truck event in Omaha. So that tells you how they're confident it was going to all work out, because the people came to help them. She's got a good thing going there. So yeah, shows became a big part of adding to the income, and at some point it became a nice second income for us. So and now it is our income, and I think people don't think that can be, oh, what a nice hobby this is, or what, I'm glad you have something to do, but people that do this realize that it can be more than that, and it is more than that to a lot of people.
Well, that's I just went to I don't know if you guys have been to the Des Moines flea market lately, so I just went this last weekend, and I got some good stuff. But
good.
I was talking to one of the guys who's like, well, you could come down here and do this. I said, absolutely not. I said, I am so burnt out on all of that after the last 6 years. I said, you will not catch me dead. I said, I have a brick and mortar, you're coming to me.
Yeah.
I said, and that's just how I feel about it. Maybe I'll change my mind later, but
I
probably
remember
not.
feeling that way too.
Yeah.
So you might change your mind because,
Maybe.
you come to me kind of thing, and that can be built up, and but yeah, we're in a season where we're kind of looking at. I won't say until it's a done deal, but we think we have the building sold in Jewell. So I did say it's not a done deal. So it could all, it's never done until it's done. We know that. But we have a motivated buyer, great gal. We're looking at moving to Milford Schoolhouse, which you did a podcast with Molly and Josh.
Mm-hmm.
And they just have a great thing going on. We did a few little pop-ups there this fall. I actually just came to Molly, and she's like a yes gal. She's like, yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. So they went great, and it's nice to be. I told Neil it's just so nice to be so much closer to home, and he did the math, and he's like, it's not that much closer. I'm like, well, if we could go straight across the cornfield, it'd be really close.
Yeah, I will say that about and I was telling Josh and Molly when I went and recorded with them, I grew up like maybe 3 miles from here as the crow flies. I said I used to do trampoline and tumbling in your gym space back there back in the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, those two, they have a tiger by the tail right there. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah.
1,000%, and good for them. But the accessibility from E29 to Ames is awful.
Is
and
it?
Like E29, I'm saying like there's no direct.
to
So
Ames.
yes.
yeah.
So
Okay,
I'm
the
talking like.
interstate.
So I'm thinking like Somerset. Like
Yes.
that's why Somerset never took off, in my opinion, is because it's awful in terms of accessibility.
Okay.
Like they had it to be this big.
It's gonna be this cute little village,
And it just isn't, because it's difficult to get to.
We actually looked at renting in
Did ya?
Somerset, yes, and just
Rent was too
no,
high, yeah.
too high.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of those things that you do definitely have to do that math. And small towns tend to be what they lack in population and foot traffic, perhaps. They make up for in overhead.
Yeah, and I think the two things that I would always say, and I don't know that I've stuck to the one. The one, as we get a little older, I'm like, okay, I have not stuck to that completely. But was be open when you say you're going to be open, when your hours are. And that's the one I fudged on a little bit as things, and I'll talk about what we've gone through in Jewell in the last. But, and also just keep your overhead low.
Mm-hmm.
And you could do that in a bigger town, but
You got to get a little more creative in the bigger town.
And I fell in love with Gilbert. I mean, Gilbert was, even though weirdly Ames didn't come to me very fast, but eventually they found out about me. But yeah, a small town is, people will be like, but there's so much foot traffic past this, and I'm like, well, there could be foot traffic, but if they're not stopping, they're not stopping. If you make it interesting enough for them to stop, they will make a point to come to your place. So it was really important in Gilbert to be open when I said I was going to be open, because if they came from Des Moines and I wasn't open, that would make me mad. It makes me mad to this day when I, still unfortunately Google something and think it's going to be open and it's not, because that's not the best way to find something. But yeah, I think Jewell, being in Jewell, we joined in with my daughter in 21 after we sold the building. We went out to the Smoky Mountains with Joe and Sandy from Broad Street Market and just thought about, and they have kind of a different thing going on. They'd be a fun one to have a podcast with. But and we came back, and I said, I thought I was going to bring it home to our barn, which is actually my mother's barn, on her property between the two of us. And it just wasn't going to work out. I didn't want to cause extra stress and extra anxiety, and so just asked Claire if I could move in with her. It worked out great because she ended up getting married and having 2 little babies really quickly, and so she is just color drenched in motherhood right now. Can I use that word again? So yes, but Jewell was like Gravy Home Goods kind of started the retail thing happening, and now we're up to 5 or 6 retail stores with a cocktail bar, Juniper and Olive, and the city was, helpful in having those little vendor village, those little buildings that can pop up. A great idea, hasn't maybe been used to the best extent, but we're coming back. But we're coming back from a year long of Highway 69 and the sidewalks being torn up. And it was, I say a year long because it was basically April through December, which is a lot of your retail stuff that goes on. Retail can be good in January, February, March too, don't get me wrong, but, and people came to us, but after a while, they just decided they'd wait until it was over, I think. And that was a hard pill to swallow for all of us, and so our hours started getting sporadic, or just as all the businesses, like, gosh, I can't pay an employee on Friday if I can't,
Right.
So yeah, we started getting sporadic hours. That affected kind of the perfect storm in Jewell with everything else. I know some people would say this wasn't the greatest retail year. Some people might say it was a good retail year, but so yeah, that's where it made it easier to kind of, and we had to be very creative, and so this Milford schoolhouse thing popping up there was like, that was a great thing for that time of the year, because it wasn't great in Jewell, and Jewell's got such good things going on. I mean, if you haven't been there and haven't seen, it is a great retail spot. One of the better ones in Iowa as far as places to go. You can spend a lot of time there for shopping and places to eat. It's next to Little Wall Lake. Great area. So we will come back. It will, but it was tough. It's been a tough 9 months, yeah.
Yeah, well, and going into it, did you have any idea or thoughts that it would be as bad as it was with the construction?
Well,
Neil, not to say that this is your time to say,
Yeah,
maybe I told you so.
if we had heard the timelines we'd heard would have been so much better. It's like, oh, we'll have this done. You'll be ready open for Central Iowa Junk Jaunt in June.
We knew it wouldn't be that. We
But-
thought, but July's, a hotter, slower month. It'll be fine. But no, it was.
Then delay after delay.
Yeah.
So
It was December and only one side of the street, because then in December the other side
The other
got
side
torn
of
up,
that,
right?
yes. Now we're done. We've got these pretty street lights. The sidewalks are good. We've got good water lines going into our buildings. But it was a tough year. And you see this time after time in small towns. And Neil made a point. He said, if you think about it, most people on a city council don't go through this but one time on a city council having a big project like this and making decisions. But boy, it hurts a small town when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And most make it, but yeah, I think all of us were like gung-ho going in because we were riding a high of Jewell being the place to be, and we could do this, and we could for a lot, for that amount of time that we thought it would take, and then it drug on, and it got tough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and so when I went, Willie and I went to Texas for Christmas, and then my cousin had a wedding, and so we went to Weatherford and picking, and I was in a shop asking a couple ladies, they'd been in business for 23 years or whatever, and I said, I've only been open since September.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how was this year? That's
Yeah.
kind of been my question to
Yeah.
anybody that I know that's been in it for a while. I'm like, how was this year? Like, how was this holiday season?
Yeah.
What did you think? And that lady, like I said, who's been in for 23 years, she said, an election year in retail, batten down the hatches. She said,
Mm-hmm.
if it's divided, like, definitely batten down the
Mm-hmm.
hatches. Like,
Yeah.
she said, your beginning of your year will probably be pretty good, but then it'll just turn off.
Yeah.
Because it's an election year and everybody's just
And
holding on
I-
to stuff. I was like,
I've
interesting.
always heard that, and I unfortunately can't tell you with it because we had other circumstances
Yeah.
involved whether that would have been the case. But I'd say the last, I don't know how many years, but elections have made a difference. More people, yeah, and we're kind of more divided, but I'm just gonna say I think things look bright.
Yeah.
And we need that.
Yeah.
Because I just feel like maybe not a lot of, we're in a, I asked you beforehand, like, how political can I get? I'm not going to get political, but we're in a fairly well-run state, I think. And that makes a difference with small business and how Iowans feel. It feels like recessions and other things come a little slower to Iowa, that I don't know if we're thrifty people but no, it's, so when it hits, you know that it's going to last a while.
Yeah.
And I just feel like we're in, have high hopes. We're in for good times if you're willing to work.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and I think, honestly, I think that's the case anytime. I think good times, bad times. If you're willing to work, there's,
you can
there's.
make it through bad times. Yeah.
You can. And that's one thing about Midwest agriculture heavy states. Like, we are in some ways a little bit insulated from recessionary pressures. Like, we definitely don't feel it as much as the coasts do. That being said, some sort of a farm crisis and and look out. But it's just, we are a little bit insulated here in many ways. But I will say, for me, even we're 7 days into January at this point. A lot of my stuff that had not has sat for the last 6 months with zero interest, zero saves, zero anything, all of a sudden is popping. And so I'm like, well, I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see. We had a great weekend last weekend, so, and sometimes it just takes a few people.
Yeah.
And I was so glad that Neal was in last weekend when a couple gals came in and, oh my gosh, they were just throwing out the compliments, and I'm like, did you hear that, Neal?
Still got it, in case you were wondering.
I said, you're embarrassing me. Stop it. Keep it coming.
Yep.
But
say it a little louder so you can hear it. Just
yeah, it's been a fun ride. It's been, I guess when you were saying somebody that's been in it, would you say 20?
23 years.
I guess we've been in it 23 going 24 years.
Yeah.
And now, so this year we will be looking to hopefully popping up once a month at the Milford. I'm just going to say it. I didn't know.
Do it. It's fine.
We have a February date picked out, and it kind of ends up being in the last weekend of each month, almost. And then we're going to stick with the shows that have just shown to have the staying power. A lot of shows have, but because we're not getting younger. So,
well, and you have to get choosy about, figure out which ones are worth it, because they're not all, they're not all worth it.
They're not.
And so just refining that.
And they don't have to be the bigger ones to be the worth it ones.
No.
I will be, that's just for sure. Just find one that isn't real expensive. Mm-hmm. Again, the overhead, but that gives a good bang for its buck. And so the ones we'll be doing are the Elkhorn Flea Market, and with that you have to deal with weather. This last year was perfect for weather, so we're going in with high hopes, but we're due.
Yeah.
We're due for a high wind.
Which is the worst.
Which is the worst.
The worst.
I think rain gets better than high winds.
Yeah, I agree.
And popping up the Milford, and then what was the other one? Junk Stock.
Junk Stock.
Yeah, really liked Junk Stock, so hopefully those will work out for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so as you look at, you're asking me what I think on the trends going forward, like, what are you seeing on your side trending wise?
Well, it's funny because I had to look it up. First you want to know what other people are thinking, and that's where that fun word color dredging came in.
Yes.
But and like you said, when you're saying medium tone woods, that was another one that I saw.
Yeah.
But you kind of see that already, so what am I seeing?
You've said people want to be able to use something if they.
Yeah, your millennials, Gen Zers. I've always noticed that vintage plus one other thing, and I've never gone to market to buy new things. It just took the joy out of it for me. It's great. I love a mix in a store. I do, but for me, I'm probably just not going to do it unless I can find somebody local that can do it for me. But see, that's where I lose my train of thought.
People don't want to buy something that's just going to sit on a shelf.
Yeah, they, you're more edited, no doubt about it. And I have people coming in, wanting to sell me things. They're huge sets of dishes and they're glassware, but glassware is making a comeback. They're really pretty stuff and they're really good, funky candlesticks and stuff like that. So do not count glassware out. But you're right. You have to kind of love it and do it anyway. I remember when the boho thing was big in 18, 19, and I'm like, man, this stuff sells. So I went out, even though I didn't love it. I loved it a little bit because it sold mostly, I think, and it meshed well. But then I had so much of it, and things are just rolling along so quickly with social media that the trends change quickly. Mm-hmm. And so really, what are those things? I'm going to ask you this too, because what are those things that are just die hard, will always be good? I have found, and I know the younger people maybe don't like it as much, but throughout the 24 years, ironstone, which back in the 1800s was called the poor people's china, has always, whether it's decorative or you use it. Now my daughter, who slaps lead cups, mugs out of my hand all the time, probably would say, don't put it in the microwave, but plant in it, use it, decorate with it. It's that's been a staple the whole 24 years. A solid piece of furniture, beautiful velvet sofas and leather couches, and those are always going to be classic. So I go between buying, a van full of things, I'll say, like back in the early 2000s for $50, but that takes a lot of work and a lot of cleanup, versus paying a little more and getting something that is a staple, and having that unique thing. Unique will always sell, and so it's a mix of filling your shop with things that are a good buy for you, and you can sell well, and you like it. You don't have to love it, but you like it, and it mixes well with the really unique things that you get. So the other day, Gravy Home Goods and J.B. Knacker set off to an auction in Humboldt. I haven't been to a live auction because everybody does it online now, but that's okay. A live auction, it was so much fun, and we looked for the same things. So we did really well at this auction, but we were both just pining over this metal dolphin on a stand, and kind of life-size metal dolphin, hoping that it would go for $100, and it didn't. It went much higher, but that would have been a fight. Yeah, we just never had a chance to get in on it. So
yeah, I like that of unique will always sell, and that's again, I think the husbands always probably look at us the same way of being like,
they hold their feet to the ground a little bit, like
maybe, or like when you're first starting out, my husband was like, I don't understand, like I don't know, show me where the money is in this first of all, and I was like, just trust me, like da-da-da-da-da. And so I ended up actually taking him to Earlham, to RJ Home, on a Sunday afternoon, and the place was packed, and everybody had bags, and he was like, okay, because there
is a shop that does new and old really well together.
Yes.
Boy, they do the mix well.
1,000%. And but for me, it was a very good, like, here's an example of what can be done. And when we walked in there, I said, first of all, look at how many people are in here. Second of all, please start looking at price tags. And so he'd look at it and he'd be like, and I'm like, do you see bags walking out of here though? I said, just trust me. And then, before I got my shop open, I started selling some of my furniture on Facebook Marketplace, and, there was like a 2-day span where I made like $1,200, and he was like, okay. And then it was, I got this beautiful mid-century modern glass top, brass bottom, velvet cantilever chairs that was in.
I don't even know what that word is.
Cantilever? They're the ones where they're like.
There's a lot of hand movement going on here. You can't see it.
They're like bent, where it's like this, where the bend underneath. I don't know how I'll show you a picture when we're done. So there are these velvet cantilever chairs that I got in an auction. so online auctions got really, really soft at the end of last year.
Okay.
Like you were getting things for
Yeah.
really cheap because I think just everything softened, and so naturally that goes with it. So I got this table, 4 chairs, pristine condition from this little old lady up the road in Colo that I'm pretty sure this was like her formal dining room that she never used, kind of a deal. Got it for $22.50 for the entire set.
Wow.
And sold it within a week for $425, and my husband was like,
Without doing anything to it?
didn't touch it.
Those are
Didn't
the
touch
best.
it. Greatest. I will, like, it's my unicorn that I only find once a year kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And he's like, but how did you know? And I was like, I just do. I don't know how to tell you. I just do. Like, and I'm like, it's part of it's I like it. Part of it's like, this is my job. I pay attention to what's in and what's not. But I can also tell you like what's classic and what is going to just.
So would that be your best buy to the state? I'll tell you ours after.
Yeah, that one probably is off the top of my head.
I would say ours was, we went to a schoolhouse auction in Pocahontas. So the old 3-story brick schoolhouse,
Yeah.
everything was being auctioned off. And we will never, and Ted gave us the lead on that. God bless him. He's gone now, but he was my main man as far as, well, you're fine. But Ted was my handsome older man, so you're young. And
not handsome.
It's perfect. Okay, keep you on your toes, Neil.
Yeah. And I was also kind of going through like perimenopause, probably didn't know it, but all these people, I was just having a little bit of a panic attack in the school, and I said, Neil, you go. They were selling my room, and Neil, you gotta go in there. And he's like, I don't know what's in there, but he came out and he said, I got it for $2.50, the whole room. It was just a small, like under the stairs in a small little room.
We had seen, I thought maybe there were like 30 locker baskets.
So those were really big.
Yes,
And
you're talking
so-
about the wire locker.
The little,
that's
yep,
my baskets,
yep,
yeah.
the little number on them. So the auctioneer had actually walked past this room and just skipped it completely. I said, hey, what about the stuff in here? Made him come back. A couple people poked their head in. He's like, oh, okay, the whole room, and $250 is where he started the bid, and I bid, and no one else did.
And we were pumped thinking we got like 15 locker baskets for $2.50.
And so everybody else went by, and I started hauling them out, and there were 124 locker baskets in there, and she was selling them at like $15 a piece, and we got that for $2.50. And people were like, where did those come from? They didn't even know
That it was in
there
there.
would have been other people bidding on it, definitely,
It was
yeah.
a fun auction.
So.
He was a keeper after that.
That was, but kind of ruined auctions for me after a while. After that. I was like, oh, if I'm not going to get something for $2.50 that we can sell for over $1,000, I'm not going.
Not doing it.
Why do it?
I know. Well, and there are auctions like that where you're just like, and I would say they mainly happen in person, although, like I said, with things really softening at the end of the year, they did start to happen for me, like in the online stuff. But interesting story about those wire lockers.
Yes.
My dad actually has the ones from Milford, like the full
Do they
set.
know? Josh know?
I told Molly when I recorded, I said, my dad has those. They're used for storage for parts in his shop. Just so you know.
How is being used appropriately?
Yes, because she had, because she's got the one in their landing there. And I was like, this one's not the one from here. And she said, no, I know. That one's not. I said, yeah, I know where it is. I said, it's just a couple miles around the road.
Well, they'll just work on you a
Yeah.
little bit at a time.
Yeah, so, but I like in-person auctions, and I think potentially there's more deals to be had at in-person auctions, but gosh dang it, I hate spending 5 hours just
It
standing.
was 5 hours, so that's why being
Yeah.
with Gravy Home Goods was made it a little more fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and that's,
And now we use all the auctioneer terms when we're talking to each other, like man down. And sold. Well, that's common, but
yeah.
Joan's got to quit using that.
Yeah.
I think your next podcast should be talking to the children of people that have done this for a long time, because I think maybe a nice way to end this would just, I think our youngest Cecilia was born 2008, so she's still at home at school right now, but she all of her friends were like named Doris and Ted and Ingrid. And
When she was playing, she would make up names.
So she came with me. Well, she'd come with me to all these places. We're going to Ted's today. She loved Ted's. But out at Ted's, there wasn't a bathroom. So there's a story where she went to the bathroom behind the tree. And Doris had all the chickens and kittens. And, you know, so she didn't mind me looking around at Doris's place. She'd be there forever. So just some really neat, fun things that in an old building on Main Street, the kids would have their Halloween parties there, and
I'd go to Colo auctions and bring home, they had the boxes that they would sell. Sometimes you get a box for $1 or whatever, and Brenda would find things and take her stuff out. I'd find things for eBay and take that out, and then the kids would rummage through and find little
dirtiest toys ever.
Dirtiest.
Their toys were nothing compared to what you could find in an auction box.
But
Just wash your hands well.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, it's fine. It was good for the immune system.
Yeah,
It's one of
probably.
those things. I'm like,
Yeah.
well, we all survived.
Yeah.
But little lead paint
paint.
here and there.
Yeah, you
It's
know.
fine. We just got to bring the IQ points down a little bit, make it fair for everybody else.
Yeah, we don't need that smart a kid.
Like I said, make it fair for everybody else. So as you guys move forward then, as you're moving away from traditional brick and mortar, shall we say, like, what are you really excited about in the next 12 months? Are you excited for this transition? Are you excited
Well-
for no, like, construction in your
I told her on the way over that it's like she's gone through this before where she switched buildings, and it's like a new lease on your business. It's almost like you can kind of flip things around, do things differently, and start over.
Kind
And
of fresh.
yeah.
Good look.
So.
I always said to Claire, I'm so sorry I've muddied up your store, because when she had Gin and Tarnish, she has such a great look. It's I don't even take credit for that. This is a kid that I don't know where her her writing ability and all that comes from, but she had Persian rugs and statuary and velvet couches, and everything was very edited and European. And then Mom comes, trudging in with
Here comes the ironstone. And
everything you didn't know that's old. Because in my mind, I loved her look. But there's also this balance between being a retail store and having that look. And what sells more? Are you full? There's a balance. There's a balance. And she just built such a neat brand but it worked out. Like I said, timing worked out well for us, that she was able to just transition and marry and move in to the house that her husband had already had. And so yeah, I'm looking forward to not every weekend. I've done weekends my whole life, and that's as a nurse too, my whole adult life. And so the kids just knew, we were kind of, I took care of the kids during the week, and he had the weekend, and yeah, and trying not to miss things, but missing some things because a lot of things are on the weekend. So I will say that moving from a brick and mortar and moving to like the Milford once a month probably will be more work, in the sense that it's almost like it's doing a show every month. So my mindset is I want it to be great, and I want it to look different every month. So Neal, it'll be a lot more work for Neal. Let's just put it this way, a lot more lifting and trudging.
Welcome.
And but my joy is, yes, we'll have a sell down coming up, and I'll put that on social media. And my love is finding the stuff. I mean, I'm just so lucky that I've been good at selling the stuff too. So otherwise, I don't know. Yeah, so I don't know what you're looking forward to, but Neal's officially retired from me, so we work together, and we are very different people, but we have a similar sense of humor, so it works.
So it works.
Okay.
Neal, maybe tell her, don't buy anything you can't carry. I think
Well,
that maybe.
That's true.
the things I've told her don't stick anyway, so.
At least you know it. At least you know it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you guys for sitting down and
Thanks for having us. We've
sharing the
enjoyed
story.
listening to all the people that we got to know through this via your podcast, and getting to know you and the next generation that is really good at this. So.
Yeah. I don't time will tell. I'm only 3 months in. That's what
We'll give you a little time.
Well, yes, the time will tell. That's the lady in Texas. She's like, well, how long? I'm like, I've been open since September. I'm like, so don't ask me anything. I don't know anything. Totally winging it. But
You do.
so, anyways, well, thank you very much for taking the time to come down here and sit down. And I think maybe there's some collaboration for your pop-up with Milford
so.
and us.
I think
Little
so. I think
mini
it'll
junk
be very
junk.
fun.
It's not that far from here. So
I know.
we can figure out a way. So,
All right. Thanks
anyways,
again.
Yeah, no problem.